Well, hi, everybody. This is DearMamaSal, and it is Sunday afternoon, which means it's time for us to be talking about coping with stress. Yeah, I've had a week of it this week, and I thought that instead of ignoring it, that we could talk a bit about it and see if we can see all sides of it and what would you do in this this situation, just so that hopefully we can all learn from this and move on, learn more skills and also be more aware of both sides of any story. And so that's the topic I'm going to be talking about in a second. But before I do that, I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of things. I wanted to just say that the quotes that I'm going to be using today are again from Thich Nhat Hanh. He is a very famous Buddhist monk, and he came from Vietnam. And he's probably the best known Buddhist teacher after the Dalai Lama. So, but he certainly teaches a great deal about being aware of ourselves and, not getting caught up in the other side of things. And that's what I wanted to concentrate on. I also wanted to just acknowledge a couple of birthdays before we do this. The first one being little baby Lilibet Diana Sussex, who was born today. Lilibet, was the Queen's nickname. They always called her Lilibet when she was growing up. So I thought that was a wonderful not credit, but I thought it was a wonderful name to give her. And what a pretty name. A unique name, and I just hope that the Queen is happy. It's just like, and Diana, of course, had to come into the name, and so I'm glad everybody's well and happy and doing well. That's the main thing. So you all heard about that, right? And can you imagine that they were at the Santa Barbara hospital, going, not used to giving birth to royalty, but they just did. And the first quote I wanted to give you was, when another person makes you suffer, it is because he or she suffers deeply within him or herself, and his or her suffering is spilled over. He does not need to punish, he needs help. He doesn't need punishment, he needs help. Make sense? This message is the one that they are sending. Hi, Judy, good to see you as well, and Jody. I wanted to just say that this is the whole topic that we're going to be talking about, and it's important. Just before I do that, I just wanted to let you know, for those of you who are longer term followers, Anna Marie's birthday is coming up on the 9th. For those of you who remember Alice's birthday is on the 17th. And we have a very important day on the 22nd. Jody goes for her echocardiogram, which is the last step to finding out she can go ahead and have her operation. And I'm going to have my second vaccine shot that day. I've got an update on Jeannie coming up right now, so just hold on that one. In the meantime, before I did that, I thought I'd let you know I at last found this lip gloss. It's been missing for the longest time, and I found it in the apron that I went to put on to do that cooking on Friday. And it was just like, well, that'll teach me not to wear that apron enough, because there it was inside the apron. So I'm really happy. And now I've got my lip gloss back. There we go. Ginny is asking, when is your birthday, Mama Sal? When's yours, Ginny? Mine is August the 30th every year. Jeannie sent me a note, and she said her operation is scheduled for June the 11th. That's in a couple of days now. But on the 8th, she has to go for a COVID test, even though she's had both of her shots. She needs to have that COVID test before she goes in for her operation. So that I thought was pretty good. And by the way, I also got an update from Manon, for those of you who know Manon in France, and she said that her ankle was fine. There was a tear in the ligament. That was what was wrong with it. She just needs to continue to rest it and do some pretty intense physio. And for those of you who heard, she got a new job, and so she's busy in that learning stage right now. So all best to her. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was something that happened to me, and it had to do with COVID. I got a message on my Facebook page from somebody that I know that lives in the Philippines, and he said, he put on a video about a female doctor totally debunking the vaccine and saying nobody should have it, and definitely, children shouldn't have it. And again, I would ask you, if somebody sent you that, how would you react? That's really what I'm trying to find out. Would you immediately agree with them, or what would you do? Excuse me, my allergies are doing a number. And I ask you, what would you do? Because I'm pretty certain that different people will react different ways to hearing that. All right, some people are going to just go, well, I wouldn't even bother to watch it. Some people would say, oh boy, it's from a doctor, it must be true. What is your reaction to it? And the reason I'm asking you to think about that is because these sort of things happen to us all the time. And, whether it's political or medical or whatever, it doesn't matter. So one of the things that I would recommend is don't discount it before you have checked it out. That would be my number one thing. So the whole thing about this is that when we understand that everybody is entitled to their opinion, but you don't necessarily have to agree with it, but you also don't have to fight it, right? Right. And Jodi's saying, I would research the advice from several sources. Yes. Now you're saying that regardless of what this female doctor had to say, even though she is a doctor, you would still check advice. Now, when you say, and I know you well enough to know that you would do that from what I call reliable sources. So the question that I have is, with the internet being so difficult these days, everybody claims to be an expert. How do you know who are the reliable sources? So can I ask you, Jodi, who would you go to check to see whether this is valid or not? And if you remember, I had a similar thing happen with my brother, who sent me something saying that the vaccine changed your DNA. And when I did the research, I found out it doesn't change your DNA. What it does is it sends the RNA. The RNA is the receptor that they send to sort the problem. So it's an interesting little difference between RNA and DNA. So, all right, Jodi's saying she'd go to the CDC, she trusts those, and she'd go to medical journals. Yes, I would also. Where would I go in the States? I probably would check with the Mayo Clinic. I've always trusted them. And then I'd also, check internationally. What does the World Health Organization have to say about this? is the World Health Organization recommending that children have the vaccine? And and those sort of things. So, and then make your own decision. All right. And the same thing as I was saying, we're going to get back into the political cycle any minute now. Our job is to get informed and then make our own choice. Make sense? So you don't have to agree with the other people, but you don't have to fight them either. And you don't have to be rude and nasty and attack them. You just need to know your side of it and then make your own decision. So remember that it is your job to stay informed, not somebody else's. And again, I would say if you see something on the news, even though it's on reliable sources on the news, as we found out, some reliable sources these days are not reliable. They're telling a lot of lies. So, be aware of what's going on. And by the way, it depends which side of the fence you sit as to whether it's a lot of lies or not. So now what I want to do is to say, when I read this, as you can probably imagine, my adrenaline shot up. And it's like, how can anybody be sending this out and saying that, especially in the Philippines, and saying you shouldn't get vaccinated? I think that made my blood boil for a second. And then I thought, they're entitled to their opinion. You know that. And I am responsible for my behavior. So I'm not going to attack. And all I did was on the same forum, if you like, that they sent it to me, I replied and said, I uphold anybody's right to have an opinion. And I understand that this doctor has this opinion. However, I have to tell you, if I got COVID-19, it would kill me. Therefore, regardless of what the doctor is saying, I definitely am about to go and get my second shot because I want to live. And that is the reason to have the shot, is that it's not perfect, but there is I am more likely to die from this thing than I am to live if I get it. And therefore, it is a no-brainer. Hi, Jonas, good to see you. It is a no-brainer to me that I need that second shot. So, but what I did was I actually worded it very calmly. And I was surprised that the person who wrote it wrote back and said, you have a lot more knowledge than we probably do here in the Philippines. And I thought that was a very kind way of answering it. Yeah, and Jody's saying that's exactly why I got vaccinated. My doctor said to me, this is Jody, her doctor said to her, you won't survive COVID if you get it, so get vaccinated. Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. So let's go back to the quote. And this time, sometimes your joy is the source of your smile. But sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. And, I love that quote because it is up to us whether we choose to be miserable or happy each day. And how about this one? He also said, to be beautiful means to be yourself. You do not need to be accepted by others. You need to accept yourself. And that is, again, to my mind, a really important quote to remember, that so often other people's judgment of us affects how we see ourselves. And it is our job to be happy in who we are. Now, what happened to me, and the story I want to tell you, is I got up yesterday, happy as a clam, Saturday morning. I love my Saturday morning, my Saturdays. It's my day off to do all sorts of things. When I say day off to do all sorts of things, some of you will understand that of me. That day is for me to do whatever I want to do. And I got up and I was really quite happy. I went and took my composting to my composter, and I was just, emptying my food scraps in there and rolling it. I got one of those rolling composters, and I turned around to see my other neighbor leaning on the raised bed that separates the properties. And so I went across and I said, "Oh, hi. Did you need me for something?" I should never have asked the question. I should have known. Anyway, and she said, "I just want to know if you are collecting plastic." I said, "I beg your pardon?" And she repeated it. And I said, "Oh, no, I am recycling plastic jugs and using them to put plants in rather than buy more plastic, yes." And then she started to call me some names. And the names had the F word at the front of them. And I took a really deep breath because remember what that first quote was about, somebody who attacks you, if you can, try very hard not to let them, do not respond at their level, because if you do, you're going to be upset with yourself. So I took a really deep breath and I told the truth. And I said, I find what you just called me pretty judgmental. I'm not being judgmental. I said, well, actually, I believe you are. And then it got worse. And a few more F-bombs came out. And I kept, every time that happened, I kept saying, and I believe you're being judgmental again. And then the third time I said, really, you're being very judgmental. No, I am not. And I said, I find it sad that you cannot see that you are. And I want to tell you, it took every bone in my body to not respond, because I could. And it was just like, really? Now, if that happened to you, what would you do? First of all, what would you do if somebody started calling you names with the F-bomb attached to it? And secondly, what would you do afterwards? And I would say that the reason I want to ask this question is because I realized that I was very systematic about what I did following that. Because the first thing I knew was that I had been verbally abused. And the next thing I knew was that it had triggered at some level some PTSD in me. That's post-traumatic stress stuff. Because I could feel that in my, I managed to keep control, but I could feel that underneath that, the old tapes were going. Any of you that have been through an abusive situation, you will probably recognize what I'm saying. That, those tapes, regardless of how well you keep control, those tapes still start to play. Yes, Jonas is saying, as soon as I find a situation to be toxic, I walk out. Let them have their energy, but I don't let them bring me down with it. Right. And that is what I did. I actually didn't, I didn't feed the monster. I just kept saying, I find that pretty judgmental, but I didn't call her names or do it, do the response of it. And the next thing I did was I realized I needed to defuse. Does that make sense? Because I knew I was angry. But the interesting thing is I was angry at me. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. Jody's saying, I'd like to think I'd be able to walk away and probably cry from frustration afterwards, I'm sure. My emotions would be all over the place until I calm down. Yes. And that's why I want to make sure that we talk about the steps. So when you have been verbally abused, it is the same as being physically abused. It hurts. How many of you agree with me? If you've ever been verbally abused, and people making these incredibly nasty judgment calls on you, and adding nasty words with it, it hurts. I don't care how strong you are. At some level, you're going to feel it. And so first thing I did was I walked into my home and I made a cup of coffee and said, the first thing you need to do is to make a cup of coffee. And then I realized that for me, the next thing I needed to do was to talk about it. I needed to defuse in a pretty safe place. And so what I did is I actually went over to my neighbor, and because I knew she would listen and she would, be there for me. And I discussed it with her. Now, obviously, because she likes me, this is another thing I want you to think about. She obviously was not happy to hear what had happened to me, and especially after everything else that's happened to me this year. And she found it very unfair and all sorts of things, which I suppose are things I wanted to hear. And then in the middle of that conversation, another friend from the community happened to pop by. And she got involved in the conversation as well. And she said something that really struck me. And what she said, in just a throwaway line, she said something about, well, I guess it depends what different people see. And so what she meant was, my being conscious of recycling was a positive to me, but obviously a negative to my neighbor. Can you see that? And that what she said, it depends on what any individual sees. That stuck in my mind for a while. And when I got home, I thought about that. And what I decided was, if I see it from her point of view, let's forget the bad language and the judgment calls and everything else. But I started to think, what if I didn't like plastic for whatever reason, and didn't like recycling for whatever reason, and had to look out of my window and see my recycling uses? And, I gave that a lot of thought. And I went, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to, as far as possible, clean up what she is looking at. I can still have them, but I'm going to put things in a different place so she can't see them. Does that make sense? And I took all that negative energy that was inside me, and I worked like a demon cleaning up stuff. And I haven't finished. I'm going to spend a couple more days doing that, but just cleaning stuff up just so that she cannot see it. And I am pretty certain, because I like to be prepared, not scared, that she is going to have, a complaint go into the community, person, because that's what she did last time she got angry with me. She complained about it. If you remember, the day after the fire, I got told I had to take my shed down, and that was because of her. And so, I'm pretty sure that's coming. And I am also aware that I can handle that. And I'm probably going to be asked to move some other things and so forth. Yeah, Jonas is great, bringing up a great quote. Jonas is saying, one of my personal mantras is a quote from The Godfather 3. And the quote is, never hate your enemies. It affects your judgment. Yes. And that's why, Jonas, once I got rid of the kid in me, when my kid stopped hurting and I could get, what do you call, logical again. I'm going, okay, let me see it from her side. Don't let me just see it from mine. And, because my side was, I have every right to, to recycle things, and I have every right to, enjoy my property. And then I went, stop. Does she have the right not to look at a mess? And that's obviously what she sees. And so I don't hate her. I don't understand her. And I do think that, she has an anger management problem, pretty obviously. But, it was just like, let me now see both sides and do what I can to lessen the problem. Now, the other thing was, it's amazing how everybody else said, well, what I would have done is, people are very quick to say that. Well, what you should have said was da 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 da. And I'm going, no. I did not want to bring myself to that level of calling her names because she called me names. Does that make sense to everybody? That's not who I choose to be. And in a way, I am quite proud of myself that I didn't go that route. I got close, but I didn't go that route. And I also know it is a total waste of energy for me to try and convince her that I am a nice person, because she doesn't think so. Yes, I quite agree, Jonas, and you've heard me say that so many times. Everybody always has a good reason for doing what they do, whether you agree with it or not. Just everybody has a good reason for doing what they do. So my good reason is I like to recycle things rather than go and buy new plastic. And her good reason was, to her, that was a mess. And actually, she called me a hoarder because of it. And I went, oh gosh, here we go. But I went, what if this is a lesson in just staying above this? And I am pretty certain those of you who love me dearly, you would also be upset that somebody, called me horrible names and things. But, the truth is, there's always a second side to the story. And so from that perspective, I found that by being able to see the second side helped me calm down. It also gave me the answer, what I needed to do next. That was to get rid of the negative energy by cleaning up as much as I could. I think I did, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I did quite a few steps yesterday, and I didn't, go out and walk or anything. Let me see how many I did, because it'll give you an idea of how much cleaning up I did. Yeah, I did over 8,000 steps yesterday. And I didn't go walking anywhere. That was just, cleaning things up. And so, hi, Kez. Kez is saying, I would have walked away, but I would have cried from the shock of being spoken to so rudely instead of speaking in a nice manner. Yes, so why do we do that, Kez? That's what I want us to think about. Why do we walk away and then cry from the shock? Right, that's interesting. You're saying you would cry from the shock. I cried because of the disbelief. How could she possibly talk to me like that? It was like unbelievable to me. Right, and Jonas is also repeating something else I talk about a lot, right? If you focus on the pain, you will continue to suffer. But if you focus on the lesson, you will continue to grow. And that's why I switched it over, Jonas. We said, okay, now that you've got your side, I started with me, because that's important. What am I feeling? I was feeling pretty hurt. pretty astonished, pretty angry, pretty judged, pretty stereotyped, pretty all sorts of things. But once I got through all of that, I then said, okay, now let me turn it around. Let me stop. I am not the center of the universe. Now let me see it from somebody else's point of view. And then I kept remembering, what that other community member had said. As in all things, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So what I saw as good recycling, she obviously saw as hoarding. So to me, it was a very big lesson. But I do want us to talk about that. Why do we walk away and cry? Jody's saying, I wonder if she grew up with a hoarding situation. Perhaps she was triggered by the plastic jugs. Personally, I don't think you're a hoarder at all, but environmentally aware of the plastic problem. Yeah. And I agree with you on that. So now what I realized, Jody, was I can keep my plastic recycling, but keep it out of the view of, I'm probably going to be asked to remove it all now because she will complain about it, I'm pretty sure. But at the moment, I've taken it out of view. The only person who can see it is me or somebody who is on my property without permission. Jonas is saying, I often struggle with this too. I get easily offended. But I realize that I have to put my personal feelings and lower instincts aside in order not to let myself become manipulated by it. Yeah. You see, how many times have you heard me say we are only responsible for our behavior, right? Not the other person's. But I also do believe that part of my behavior needs to be to see both sides. All right. And that was part of my de-stressing, was to actually say, wait a minute, if you looked out, now the thing is, I can't see my other neighbor from my kitchen window because I've got a greenhouse type kitchen window, one of those ones that sticks out, but it also has frosted glass on it. So I can't directly see my neighbor. I can if I look on the side windows, but the front one I can't. And I'm going, what if she looks out onto that every day? And I can understand that maybe is upsetting. And also, I can know that I'm pretty sure that there's more coming down the pike because her revenge will be to report this now, because that's what she did last time. Is that fair? Depends what side of the fence you sit, right? Now, are any of you upset even listening to the story? And why? Because that's the other thing I want to talk about, which is, it's my story and it's my issue. But how often do you hear of something going on with a friend of yours or somebody you care about, and then you get upset about it as well? It's not going to help me at all. And it's funny you should have said that, Jody, because I went, if you walk through my house right now, I don't think the picture you see is one of a hoarder, except maybe in my craft room, because I haven't finished tidying that up. What you see is somebody desperately trying to get order from a whole lot of chaos. And it's just like, I am going to spend a couple of days trying to clean up my deck, because I realized that she probably looks onto my deck as well. And my deck has become a sort of staging point for me, because I need to keep certain things until all the renos have been cleared. I can't get rid of the paint, because they might need it. All those sort of things are still on my deck, and they probably look pretty nasty. All right, so Jody's saying, yes, my adrenaline went up when you told me. I expected that to happen, but that was your choice, right? And Jody's saying, I was angry to think she just went straight to name calling and not a reasonable conversation. Yeah. Well, now then, let's talk about that one. Ever done it? Have you ever, in a previous life or whatever, have you ever called other people names? Because if you have, let's think why. I definitely have, because I'm not a perfect person. But again, now that I think about it, it was before I learned as much as I know now. And I called people names because they weren't agreeing with me, I think. If I look at it now. And I didn't understand that they had the right not to agree with me. And I used to get really quite upset with people not agreeing with me. Because, somewhere in the back of my brain, I must have thought I was ruler of the universe or something. But, or I felt they were attacking me. That would cause me to come up with name calling. So maybe she felt attacked. All right, and Jonas is saying people nowadays are so trapped in their inner ideology that they are always trying to prove something as opposed to taking the time to understand someone. And Jody's saying, after feeling personally attacked, and also before DearMamaSal was in my life, because I was an emotional pretzel. Yeah, so, you look at it and go, I can remember when I would have done that as well. And, I'm now wondering whether if I need to send a note of apology and say, I am sorry. All right, so Kaz is saying that she's a little annoyed about her rude approach. When I was a teenager, I did that for a few years. Yes, and that's what I was thinking about, Kaz, which is maybe she hasn't learned that anger management yet. And maybe she hasn't had a chance to learn those skills and maybe never will. And so, in even the fact that, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a visit from the community person telling me I've got to do different things. I'm going, be ready for it because it's coming. And, and I'm going, yep, and it will be valid if I'm not looking at it from my point of view. And so I don't have to be upset when it happens now. It makes sense. If it doesn't happen, I'll be delighted, but I'm pretty sure it will. And therefore, because I'm pretty sure it's going to happen, I'm expecting it. I'm not going to get upset when it happens. I'll just go, okay, what do you want me to change? Let me know. Now, the other thing is, yet again, I am going to have a discussion with the controlling body. I rent the land on which my house sits. And I want to find out from the controlling body of things like mine. I've got a manufactured home. What rights do I have? Because the last time this happened, they complained about stuff that was on my deck. And I said, that deck is my property, not yours. And if the neighbors can't see it, if you can't see it from the road, but then I realized, what if the neighbor can see it? So then what I did is I started to drop down. I've got some blinds on my deck, and I dropped them down in front of her window. So even if she looks, she's now looking at a blind, not at whatever she can see on my deck. Makes sense. It was and I'm trying to think, what else can I do? Oh, I did make one point of view. The one thing I did say, I wasn't proud of myself afterwards, but I did say in passing, by the way, if you hadn't complained about my shed and made me have it removed, you wouldn't be able to see the stuff you're complaining about. I did say that. Yeah. All right, so Jody's saying, I think they need to keep in mind exactly what you've been dealing with, the fire, the renters. Yeah, but they won't, Jody. They're not interested in that, right? When you think about it, if they were compassionate people, this wouldn't have started. So remember that whole broadcast we did on expectations, right? And remember, this is the same community person that came to me the day after the fire and told me to get rid of my shed. You know, I mean, how considerate was that one? And that's why I want to talk to the. I might even end up talking to my lawyer about it, find out, you know, how much they can control. And am I allowed to have what I want to have on my own deck? I don't know. I'm going to find that out. And my sense is that if it's visible to somebody else and upsetting somebody else, I guess I don't. And that's what I try to see both sides on. So now, of course, I'm busy thinking, how do maybe I end up enclosing my deck in some way. Jonas is saying, I don't mind saying that to each his own. That's just their opinion. But what I have a hard time with is hypocrites. People who impose rules and then make exceptions to themselves. Yes, you know, and it was funny, Jonas, because I did look at her and I say, oh, so if you're complaining about this, can I also talk about the stuff that's behind your house that I can see now that the shed's not there? You know, because it was like, I agree. It was like, let's play fair here. So, but you know, it wasn't helping the situation. Walking away was what I needed to do, and I did eventually. But you know, I also realized, and that I understood, that because I wasn't agreeing with her in any way, she got more and more angry at me. And I understood that side of it. And that's why I didn't call her names or anything. Whenever I was ready to call her names, I just said, I find that a little judgmental. I kept repeating that. I must have said it about 5 times. You know, and then here you go again. That's a little judgmental. And so difficult stuff, huh? Difficult stuff when people verbally abuse you. And how about the fact that that they also are using 4-letter words at you? I don't know about you, but that got my blood boiling. Not that I'm a perfect person. I've been known to use them, but you know, I don't use them at people. And the interesting thing was that I could later really see this was somebody who was out of control to some degree and probably isn't going to be in control. And so what are my options? She's my neighbor, right? And you know, that's what you got to think about, is that I could start World War III, but you know, there's no point. The other thing is, I now know, as Jonas said, this is a pretty toxic person, because just about every time I have spoken to her, there's ended up being this sort of judgment going on. So now I know not to talk to her. When I say not to talk to her, but I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna continue to say hello because that's who I am. But that's it. I might wave or something, but I'm not going to engage in conversation. And I think the other thing that is difficult is, how many of you, if you were in this situation, would want to get revenge? in some way. Jonas is saying she's fighting against herself more than she is anyone else. Yeah, but she doesn't know that yet, Jonas. She's not that evolved, all right? It's the same thing as I can remember one time talking to a wife who was really complaining to me that her husband, every time they went out anywhere, he ended up talking to everybody and having a good time and ignoring her and da 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 da. And I said, I got to tell you something. You have turned into quite a bitter person. And if you really think about it, would you want to sit with you all evening when you've got this attitude going? She said, what? And I said, think about it. Are you fun to be with? Or was that blonde over in the corner much more fun to be with? Because they kept, she kept complimenting him and laughing at his jokes or doing whatever. I said, you got to think about it. There's a reason why people do these things. And she said, I never thought of it like that. And I said, well, and then another question I have for you. And she said, what's that? And I said, when you met him, was he the life and soul of the party and that's what attracted you? That everybody noticed him and he was, so funny and, everybody enjoyed being close to him and he was like a magnet for people. She said, yes, actually, that is exactly what happened. And I said, so you fell in love with it. Why do you hate it now? And that's something I've also noticed. What about you guys? That, if you think about it, the reason a lot of people get married is the same reason they get divorced. The person didn't change. They just didn't change. That was the problem. Kes is saying, I think if you don't have piles of stuff in your yard that attracts wild animals or huge amount of bugs to your yard, she has no right to complain. That's the conversation I'm going to have. But this community, because I live in a community, this community has some pretty strict rules about, how tidy things must be and this, that, and the other. So I'm pretty certain I'm going to have that judgment call come down as well. And that's why what I want to do is to have a conversation with the people that control my rights and find out exactly, what the story is on that. So, with pictures if necessary. So that's what I will do. And this is for my own satisfaction. Now, I don't believe that my composting can be a problem. I have two different sorts of compost. The stuff that is food scraps, I have in a closed composter. It's not open for attracting anything. And my stuff from my yard is an open one, but it's, that's just leaves and branches and stuff in there. So, and, we are encouraged to do composting. Our municipality encourages, that you compost your food scraps. So I know that isn't an issue, or it shouldn't be one. So you understand that this was a pretty stressful time for me. So what I did this morning, I thought this was interesting. Some of you might relate to this. This morning, I decided, I woke up actually earlier than normal, obviously because my brain's working, but it doesn't normally wake up that early. But my brain was working and I woke up and I thought, I'm going to do something I don't normally do. And I went and made a cup of coffee and I sat in bed and watched the French Open tennis tournament for a while, for about an hour. I never have coffee in bed. I always get up and sit right here and have my coffee and work with this computer. So I thought what I'd do is I'd change my routine. Why? Why is that a good idea? Think about that. And while you're typing the reason for that. I then decided, I got the groceries in between the two broadcasts yesterday, and I got my meat for the month. And what I decided to do was to actually spend the morning cooking up the meat so that it was already cooked. I had two beautiful chicken breasts that I cooked those up, and then I put them into servings. I was amazed. I got about 6 servings of chicken out of that. I've noticed that the old days I used to be able to eat a complete chicken breast. And then I went down to half a chicken breast. Now I'm at about a third of a chicken breast is enough meat for me. How about you guys? Have you noticed a shift in that? And then not only did I do that, but I had some pork and beef, ground pork and beef. And I added herbs and some egg and some spices and stuff. And I made little protein pucks, if you like, about this big. And I made enough to keep me going. I think I put them in bags of 2 at a time. So, for example, if I decide I want to have shepherd's pie, I can bring them out and just crumble them and put mashed potato on top of them. It's already cooked. If I want to have a protein bite, I can just take them, maybe put a piece of cucumber and some mayo on top and do that. And then, I had such fun because, I love to experiment. I took half a potato and I actually will demonstrate that next week, I think. But what I did is I put it in my blender to mush it all down, if you like, and then squeeze the liquid out of it. And then I made like a hash brown patty out of half a potato. But what I did was I had it in the center while the little protein pucks were cooking. So that it was cooking in the juice and fat of that. They tasted so good. I made like that potato pancake. And then when all the meat had finished cooking and crisped that up so nicely, I then fried an egg and put it on top of the potato puck. And then I added about 6 grape tomatoes to it and had that for breakfast. And it was great fun. But I cooked the chicken, the beef, and the beef and pork mix, and as I said, it's probably enough to keep me going for at least 2 weeks, maybe more. We'll see. Now, that was another thing I wanted to ask you. I made a decision to change the way I keep things in my freezer. Normally, I keep my things in what I call logical, I keep everything in Safeway bags, because I'm a hoarder, Safeway bags, so that it's easy to pull it out of a deep freezer. But I actually have them in sort of like, okay, this is beef, this is chicken, this is fish, this is cheese and butter, things like that, all right? So they're categorized like that. And I thought, I think I'm going to stop doing that. And the reason I'm going to stop doing it is because that's how things end up being, at the bottom of the freezer and never being used. And so starting today, I've decided I'm going to keep the stuff in my freezer by months. This is what I bought, in June. I think I put May on it now that I think about it. But it is June, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, but you understand, so that I know now to start using up the stuff that isn't in that bag before I touch that one. Does that make any sense? And so what I'm now looking at is, I've got a freezer at the bottom of my fridge, and then the big freezer, which you can put a body in, full of food. Well, Jody, I was thinking that I know what a lot of stuff is, but what stuff do I not really know about? And the other thing was, Jody, I have started to go back into, the religious thing of I'm going to work very hard at not eating meat on a Friday, that I'm going to eat fish if I can. And I got out of doing that because I went through school, and the fish that we had was not nice. And I thought, I can have prawns, or which I did on Friday. I can have prawns. That's fish. That's not meat. I can have, fish cakes. I used to love fish cakes as a kid. I could make my own fish cakes and things. So there are some ways to do it and have fun with it, I think. That's what I'm thinking. So I wanted to ask you, for those of you who've got bigger freezers, if you have, how do you keep your stuff in there? And how many of you agree that it might be an idea to do it by the months rather than by... The other thing I've got is I've got a blackboard in my kitchen. It actually is blackboard paper. And I've started to write down April, because that's when I got back at the end of March, right? So April, I wrote down everything I put in the freezer. And then as I'm clearing it, I'm rubbing it out. So I still now know what is in the freezer that I haven't used in the way of meat. And it's working for me, where I look at it and I go, what do I need to cook this week? And this meat I cooked because most of the chicken and the protein packs, the reason that I cook those up is because they're what I call grab a bag and make an instant meal. For those of you who were watching on Friday before the internet broke on my side, you remember I made that fried rice with, what did I have on it? Prawns, that's right. I ended up only eating half of the fried rice and the vegetables. Actually, I ate all the vegetables, just about all the vegetables. But I only got, because the rice was right at the bottom, and I recommend that. If you remember, do that. Put the rice at the bottom, then a load of vegetables, and then a little bit of whatever the protein is. And I went straight through the prawns without any problem at all. And I then went through all the vegetables. You remember all the little strips of zucchini and carrot, and then the peppers and everything else, and onion, and boy, I had really a lot. And I think I'm going to cook more of those bowls now, because it was a very full meal, and I didn't get to finish the rice at the bottom. And the rice at the bottom was the stuff that had the carbs in it. So I'm going to do more of those because it felt like a really big meal. And yet most of it was, pretty healthy. So I am looking at ways to do this better. And also, as you can imagine, this morning when I got up, I went, I need to not, worry too much about the broadcast today. I need to worry about me. I can still do the broadcast, but I can use it as a lesson because I know it is a lesson for us all. But the other side of it is that, it's okay to just take a bit of time to talk about it. And I know that you all relate to this sort of stuff. It happens to us all, right? It's not just to me. It happens to everybody. And it is important that we understand that, because I think all too often we think, oh, I must have been a bad person because this happened to me. No, you're not a bad person. This happens because life happens like this, all right? Makes sense? So I look at it and go, it is up to me what I do with the energy. I can sit and feel very upset. I just closed the quotes. How did I do that? That wasn't very smart, was it? I can be very upset, or Or I can just go, it's up to me now to control my mood and keep me happy. So let me ask you something. Normally on a Sunday, I go to have Chinese dinner with my other neighbors. What do you think? Should I go and enjoy that or not? What would you do? In other words, would you keep your routine the same as normal, or would you change it? I'm just trying to get the quotes back, people. Hang on a second, please. Oh, by the way, Jodie's saying about her freezer, we have several baskets that sit on the top of the freezer that helps us categorize stuff. Yes, I do too. And that would be a good thing, actually, Jodie. I'm thinking about it now, to actually put food in there now that says, this is the first basket of food I need to use up. And this is the second. And this is the third, rather than have it in categories. For me, because otherwise I think I end up I just keep missing the same things. All right, so Jodie's saying I'd go to dinner with friends first and then add something different to my routine in some way. Good self-care. I've actually decided not to go. Any idea why I would choose not to go? And while you're thinking about that, here's the next quote. Letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness. If in our heart we still cling on to anything, anger, anxiety, or possessions, we cannot be free. You see, and that's, I keep looking at these quotes and going, is it by coincidence? I can let go of stuff and be free. So I'm going to choose to take this whole episode as something that wasn't a coincidence. All right. Yes, Jody, you know me so well. Jody's saying the reason that I'm not going is you don't want to turn it into a session where you're all discussing the problem neighbor. Yeah. And not only that, there's a second component. That was part of it, Jody. The second part is I am still a little triggered. All right. I'm still not totally grounded. I'm doing a fairly good job of it, but I'm not totally grounded yet. And therefore I will be hypersensitive to anybody's body language or snide comments or anything else that probably is going to be said in jest. Does that make sense? And so I'd rather not go there. But what I do want to do is actually write to that one community member who made that throwaway line about beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and thank her and tell her what I did with that thought later and why it helped me take the next move. Because there's an opportunity there for me to really be thankful. And the other thing is, I'm trying very hard not to be a hoarder. I think you all know that. I'm trying very hard to throw things away. But, there's a limit to how much you can throw away when you've got a garbage can this size every week. But every week I work hard at throwing things away or donating it. And it's not at the rate other people might like, but, I am doing it and I know I'm doing it. And I'm pretty proud of myself for the way that I'm doing it. So I'm going to continue to do it as best I can. And what I've decided is I'm going to work on my deck and to get stuff into boxes on my deck, but cover the boxes and make it look like seats. You know what I mean? Use the boxes, but literally put black plastic bags over them and then cushions on top so that they look like seats. Now, how can that offend anybody? That's what I thought. Why don't I? Oh, and by the way, she didn't like my hanging garden. You know, my salad. I had an over the door shoe rack, that, you know, the thing that you can put your shoes in, and I had all my lettuces and things in there. Didn't like that either. And so what I did was I took it onto the deck, and I have the right to grow my lettuce on my own deck. I know I must have the right to do that. You know, so then I was trying to find a creative place where I could put this hanger. And I got it all sorted out, and it was great. And then I opened the sliding door onto the deck, and the whole thing fell over. And I had dirt and plants and water everywhere. And I just burst out laughing and just went, okay, breathe. You can do this. And then he also said, listen to this one, feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. And Jody's saying, excuse me. Jody is saying how lucky that they must be that their lives are so devoid of problems that they can focus on a hanging garden of yours. Yeah. But you know, I thought the over the door shoe container was a brilliant answer to my need. Apparently not for everybody. So I'll get it out of sight. And if she can't see it, I don't think she's going to continue to complain about it, right? Many people think excitement is happiness. But when you are excited, you're not peaceful. True happiness is based on peace. Wow, that's so true, isn't it? You know, I read somewhere, and Jonas, you probably have some input on this one. I read somewhere a long time ago that good things are as stressful to us as the bad things. In other words, you can get as much stress out of going to a wedding as you can going to a funeral. Do any of you agree with that? Can you see the reality of that? It is about what keeps us happy. It is being peaceful, right? It's not getting. How much stress is there in getting all dressed up to go to a wedding, you know, or in the old days we had to get all dressed up to go to dinner. Now we don't. You know, since the pandemic, we've learned that we don't have to do that anymore. So you look at it and you go, it is an important thing for us to understand that, you know, getting excited is stressful to the body. And I also was so aware yesterday that being verbally abused is stressful to the body, right? Holding my temper, because, you know, I could have answered back quite easily. The ability, holding my temper and controlling my temper was quite stressful for me. And I gave myself full acknowledgement for the fact that I did that. And when, you know, you held your tongue, and that's an improvement, you held your tongue and you let her do her thing, and, you know, and then other people judge me because I didn't rip her one, you know, when I'm going, you know, where she wouldn't have understood it or agreed with it. What was the point? So, great lessons. Don't you think life is interesting when you can see it from both sides? Don't you think it's sort of like, wow, it's not a one sided thing. If you bother, as Jonas said, if you bother to take the time and see it from both sides, it's amazing the things you can learn. Or I can insist on being right. It's my right to be able to do this, that, and the other. I can have my hanging gardens and whatever. No. The biggest problem I have is that there is not a fence between us. And Jody's saying, you did a fantastic job. That was a gift to yourself. You had the ability to cut her in half verbally. I remember that. I remember once when I actually did some work when something really bad happened in my life, and I was busy trying to work through it, and I went to some group stuff. And boy, did I cause a problem in that group. I was like a lightning rod to the people in that group. I don't know what it was about me, other than the fact I breathed. But, everything, it was like they saw me in so many different ways. And it was quite funny how they all attacked me. And a couple in particular really attacked me. And, I can remember that the therapist leading the group said to me one day, so why don't you defend yourself? And I said, that's why I'm here. And she said, what? And I said, that's why I'm here. I'm here to learn not to react to other people's stuff. It is their stuff. And my whole reason for being here is because I know I bring out these things in people. You either like me or you don't. And I said I was pretty sure I was going to find some people that didn't like me just by breathing. And I succeeded. And I said, the whole reason I'm here is to learn not to react to it or not to respond to it. I still will react. I know I will react inside, but I want to learn not to cut them off at the knees. Jody, you're absolutely right. I've always said that being a comic, which I was, for so long, I was a public speaker, but I was funny, that coming out with a one-liner that is funny also means you have the ability to come up with a one-liner that can hurt people. I wonder if any of you have done that. And that is the thing that I wanted to stop, was to stop pushing back with the one-liner that would cut them in half, which, as we said, I'm more than capable of doing. And spent a lot of my life doing, quite honestly, early life. Well done, Jeannie. Jeannie, thank you for the update. I did inform. No, did I inform everybody? Yes, I did. And it's interesting that you need to get your vaccine. Your COVID checked before you have that operation. So anyway, we wish you all the best. It's obviously going to be a difficult time. Any news on the update on when you're going back home? I'm going to carry on while you type that. So he also said, breathing in, I calm body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is the only moment. So can you see that even with all this going down yesterday, it is up to me to control myself today. It is up to me to take responsibility for being happy today. It is up to me to do whatever I can to make sure I don't accidentally hurt other people today, because I'm a little more sensitive because of what happened. And so all of this is taking accountability for myself and protecting others. All right, so Jody's saying, I need to have the rapid COVID test as well. the morning of the surgery, even though fully vaccinated. Yes, that's what Jeannie is doing as well. It's because we still have the potential to be asymptomatic carriers. Absolutely. And Jeannie's saying, no update. I intend to recuperate a while at the hotel before moving. Good for you. That's looking after yourself. And Jeannie's confirming that that's what she was told as well, that she needs, they need to double check that she's not an asymptomatic carrier. Asymptomatic means that you have it, but you're not showing any signs of it. Just so that if you don't, it's a big word, 75-cent word. So what have we learned today, people? As you were listening to the story, as you heard what I did, I'm not saying what I did was the only way of dealing with it, but what did you learn for yourself that might help you in future? And while you're feeding back on that one, if you love someone, but really make yourself available to him or her, that is not true love. Think about that one. Who is it that you think you're friends with, but you haven't been very friendly recently? And he also said, hope is important because it can make the present moment less difficult to bear. If we believe that tomorrow will be better, we can bear hardship today. And how many of you can see that? How many of you can see that I am using this experience to help me unpack and declutter? I've already got all these plans in my mind. A lot of stuff's going to go back in boxes. All right. It's going to go back in boxes. Why? Because the boxes were tidier than it being out on the deck. So I'm going to put some boxes back together again and put some of the stuff that's now on the deck into those boxes and then put them away until I can get to them. Jeannie's saying, I love the Friday night session. Yeah, I'm glad you did. It always amazes me that you guys enjoy my fiddling with food. That's what I should call it, actually, fiddling with food. It is always amazing to me, but I want to tell you something, Jeannie. It tasted so good. I was thinking today when I was making, cooking everything up the way that I was, and at the same time was making this one potato pancake. And I'm going, I should have recorded this, and I'm going, I can do it again. Fiddling with food. Don't you think that is what I do? And what I love about the fact is you understand I don't measure things, or I just go, yeah, I think I'd like to make that. And then I sort of make it up as I go along. Now, the problem is, and it's always been a problem for me, I can remember once in Africa having a big party, and there were a lot of people there, enough that we actually barbecued a pig and a sheep that day. Literally barbecued a full pig and a full sheep. And and I made the marinade to go over them. And I did that in a bucket, like a big paint bucket. And I was hucking stuff in there. And then, of course, it happened. People started to come and they went, oh, that tasted so good. What was in that marinade? And I went, good question. Let me think. Oil? I know there was oil in it. I know there was quite a lot of wine in it. I know there was soy sauce in it. Brown sugar, tomato ketchup. What else was in the fridge? And I said, and they're going, no, but how much? I said, some. I mean, some. What can I say? But I do want to say that bowl yesterday, when I went to eat it, it still tasted good, even though it had waited a while in the oven, keeping warm. But, you know, it was really incredibly tasty and it surprised me. Now, I also found out that the non-stick thing on that griddle of mine, you know, that crepe maker that I cook on, I love cooking on that thing. There's something very in the moment about cooking on that griddle. And this morning when I was cooking on it, I realized that the non-stick has worn off it now. And then, of course, you know, that's not going to stop me, right? So next week, I'm going to show you what I did to fix that problem. Because, you know, I love the unit. I'm not throwing it away just because the non-stick isn't working properly on it anymore. This is called Plan B. And so I'm looking forward to showing you what I did to fix the problem. And I know you're going to go, yeah, only so. And how about this one? He said that my actions are my only true belongings. Remember when I was being verbally abused, I had every right to respond. And, you know, if you ask most people, they would say, why didn't you call her the same sort of thing? And my attitude is, I am only responsible for my behavior, not hers. Not hers. I am only responsible for mine. And that to me, you know, my actions are my only true belongings. All right, and Jeannie's saying tonight, York, that's her husband, York and I entertained. We had baby back ribs, chicken legs, woo, and kielbasa with garden salad and lemonade. I invited some of the hotel guests. Wow, isn't that wonderful? First time in over a year. We're not allowed to entertain very many people yet in Canada, or my part of Canada. We are allowed to go back into the restaurants now, but just so you know, I won't have my second shot until the 22nd. And I don't think that I'm going to be entertaining people unless they've had both shots as well, just in case I'm a carrier and I don't know it. But I'm glad to hear it. And I know for you that would have been so much fun. I'm looking forward to doing that as well. And Jody's saying it sounds so nice, Jenny. Yeah, and you know, I think for anybody who enjoys entertaining, it's been a very tough year. I've said to so many people, I am a tactile person. I touch people, I hug them, I touch them when I talk to them. You know, it's who I am, as you know. And what I said was, it was the most difficult year to me. Jody's saying, please wait 14 days after the second dose. I intend to do at least that, yes. So that's good. Another quote, for things to reveal themselves to us, we need to be ready to abandon our views about them. So you understand that's part of what I've decided was maybe this whole thing was a lesson for me. And I do believe that it was, and I can see it as one. You see, I believe that life is one long lesson. And every time you think you've learned it, you know, the next part of the lesson pops up and you go, yeah, I guess I need to look at that one again. And so to me, it's an interesting way of living life. And, you know, and I keep so desperately trying to get my life with no drama in it. You know, I want to retire from the drama. And, you know, I don't know if you've noticed, but as soon as I think I'm just about settled, boom, there's more drama comes back. And now this week I've got to deal with the Renault guys coming in and deciding what I can and cannot have, you know. And I found out that I have to get a written evaluation on the pearls that I cannot show anybody. I have to have a jeweler give a written valuation of what their worth would have been. Very difficult because I don't have any, you know, they said, you know, if you could send photographs. Well, hello. What photographs? I haven't found any yet. Very difficult. So here is the thing. Coping with stress is part of our life. And so I'm hoping that in telling my story today, that some of you will go, I don't have to respond. Right? Just because she is verbally abusing me does not mean I have to respond. And I kept saying inside my head, Sal, remember, what she thinks of you is none of your business. It's hers. Her business. She is the angry one. And don't take it on. But I did to some degree because I'm human. But then I worked very quickly to defuse as much as I could, get it out of my mind, talked about it so I could get it out of my mind. I then changed my routines so that I had lots of energy going, and using that negative energy that had been implanted or I'd allowed to come in. That's what got me so angry. It was like, I got up in such a happy mood until she opened her mouth. And it was like, I was angry that I let her in. Does that make sense? I was angry at me, not at her. I was angry at me because I allowed her into my space, my mental space. And I realized that that is quite a lot of growth. And even when my neighbors were saying, but why are you angry at yourself? I said, I didn't keep her out. I let her in. I let her abuse anger me. And I'm angry at myself for having that reaction because I've got more work to do. But that's the lesson. That is the lesson. All right. So Jody's saying, I feel so grateful for having you as a mentor, Sal. You've helped me become a better person. Well, I'd like to suggest, Jody, you were always a better person. You were, I believe that we all, given the perfect world, we're all quite nice people. We incline not to show it sometimes, but I do honestly believe that we all, given the right circumstances, are quite nice people. I think the difficulty was to learn, and it took me a lifetime to learn that I am the one that gives myself the right conditions, not somebody else. It is, as we've been saying in these quotes today, right? It is up to us to protect our minds from the outside chitter-chatter. And that we understand that being excited is a drama, being angry is a drama, being resentful is a drama. And, we don't really do well. Or maybe you do. I don't do well in drama anymore. And yet that's what I lived for so long of my life. And I keep going, all I want to do is just live peacefully. Why am I still getting the drama? And you know why? I still have lessons to learn, obviously. So I hope that you smiled a bit. I am pretty certain that there was some emotional roller coaster going on. I can assure you that on Friday, when the internet decided to die on me the way that it did, I was pretty... that invaded my space for a little while, and then I just went, it is what it is. Jeannie's saying, you helped many people. Missed what happened, but I know some folks act badly. out of jealousy and self-hatred. Yes, that actually was what we were talking about. I was verbally abused. Yeah. And it was interesting because what I was is exactly the conversation that we've been having. So, guys, whatever hits you this week, it's a learning lesson somewhere in there. You just need to find it. And if you can say that about everything, good or bad, it's all a learning lesson. It's all a lesson to be learned. And we will keep repeating the lessons until we've got it. And then we'll have to relearn it again. So have a wonderful week. Make it a wonderful week. Jeannie, take it easy and know that we will be with you at some level as you go through this week. So, big hugs from us. And how long do they reckon the convalescence will be? I would imagine that's going to be a sort of 4 to 6 week thing, right? Or probably less because it's lap. It's not the full incision, right? But we send you lots of love as well. Thank you for the kind words here, Jeannie, saying sending extra love to yourself. Thank you. I would say the way I'm going to occupy my mind tonight is I am going to binge watch something I've been trying to binge watch. I'm going to, make myself a really nice dinner and just take it easy. And then start clean up tomorrow. Only 2 weeks with the stent in, and then a month of, about 6 weeks, yeah. That's what I thought. And normally anything that's abdominal like that is going to take 6 weeks until you're really functioning. You won't be able to drive, or will you? So, Jody, can we make sure that we put that into the system, just so for Friday? Yeah. Just put it on the reminders for me. Thank you, and we'll send you some thoughts and prayers. And obviously, if you could let me know any way you can. Once or have York let me know, just so that we know that you're okay and you got through the op all right. I hate to ask that, but please, people care. Would you be able to make a plan? It's Jeannie. She's able to make a plan, I'm sure. If anybody can make a plan, it'll be Jeannie. She'll probably be cooking for the nurses next. All right, everybody, have a great week. Thank you for being here to let me tell the stories. And I would like to say that I don't know about you, but I think it's when we have these real life stories, these real life stories, that we get to learn the lessons a different way. All right. And I'm hoping that all of you can feel that when you heard somebody verbally abuse me the way they did, that how you naturally wanted to protect me, I would imagine. But then as I started to talk about, but what about the other side? That you could see the other side too. And if we found that balance, then we have grown. Then we have grown. If you're capable of seeing both sides. And that is really what we're all aiming for, is not to hate anybody, right? Everybody has the right to their opinion, whether we agree with it or not. And my idea of smart recycling obviously was her idea of hoarding plastic. So I got it. I got it. I got it out of her line of sight. Hopefully that will work. This is DearMamaSal saying bye for now. We'll catch you next week. Jeannie, we'll think of you while we're cooking next week. Well, we'll think of you a lot, but particularly when we're cooking. Bye-bye for now.